The 1954 disaster film, The High and the Mighty, was directed by William Wellman and starred John Wayne. He plays Dan Roman, whose airliner has had a catastrophic engine failure while crossing the Pacific Ocean. It has a great supporting cast, which includes Claire Trevor, Lorraine Day, Robert Stack, Jan Sterling, Phil Harris, and Robert Newton. This movie is considered the first disaster film to hit the big screens. As you remember, in the 1970s, theaters were loaded with this type film. But this is what laid the groundwork for all of those. Preparing to take off from Honolulu, a DC-4 airliner that's en route to San Francisco with 17 passengers and 5 crew on board. Dan Roman, played by John Wayne, is the flight's veteran first officer, and he's known for his habit of whistling, which calms him somewhat because he's severely haunted by an air crash that killed his wife and son and left him with a permanent limp. The captain is played by Robert Stack. His character is John Sullivan, and he suffers from a secret fear of responsibility after logging many hours looking after the lives of passengers and aircrew. Doe Avedon plays the flight attendant Spaulding, and she attends to the passengers with such care it's just remarkable. All of the passengers seem to have a load of personal problems that they've experienced in their life, including a jaded former actress named Mae Holst, played by Claire Trevor, a very unhappy married heiress named Lydia Rice, played by Lorraine Day, and then there's the aging beauty queen, Sally McGee, played by Jan Sterling. Phil Harris plays the cheerful vacationer, Ed Joseph. Flight attendant Spaulding befriends the terminally ill Frank Briscoe, played by Paul Fix, after being just charmed to death by the pocket watch that he has. And then there's the last-minute arrival of Humphrey Agnew, played by Sidney Blackmere. He causes everybody concern with his odd behavior. They have a routine takeoff, but then the airliner experiences some sporadic and sudden vibrations. The crew can't seem to locate the problem that they're having, but they don't seem too concerned about it initially. After nightfall, the airliner passes the point of no return for the ability to turn back to Hawaii. The airliner swerves violently and loses a propeller, and its engine catches fire. They're able to quickly extinguish the fire, but the engine has twisted off its mounting. While stuck in mid-ocean, the aircrew radios for help and sets in motion a rescue operation. They then discover that they're losing fuel out of a damaged wing tank. They finally realize that because of the situation they're in, they're probably going to have to ditch the plane in the ocean, and they make preparations to do that. Dan Roman's experience tells him that their luck would be better at trying to make it to San Francisco and make a landing than ditching in the rough seas at night. The Captain Sullivan is against this idea and thinks that they need to ditch the plane, but John Wayne ends up slapping him back to his senses. The airliner approaches San Francisco on a rain-swept night at a very low altitude as the airport prepares for this emergency instrument landing. The airport turns up the runway lights, and the pilots are able to dodge the city's surrounding hills and buildings as they see the runway in sight. Once they're safely landed, reporters bombard the passengers as they exit the plane. The pilots gather underneath the plane, looking at its damaged engine, and they realize that they only had 30 gallons of fuel remaining in their tanks. Dan Roman, John Wayne's character, acknowledges the gamble they took to get the plane safely down, and he walks away, limping and whistling into the night. This is widely considered to be one of the best performances of John Wayne's career, and it's truly accidental at that. He ended up stepping into the part at the 11th hour following Spencer Tracy's last-minute exit, and he merely did this to save the project from going over budget. The character he plays of Roman is stricken, vulnerable, and utterly unheroic. which is just the opposite of John Wayne's normal screen persona. This film forced him to play considerably outside of his normal range. The result was a heart-rending, unexpected, touching performance. A big portion of his role is largely unscripted, especially in the first half of the film. Nearly all of his performance is conveyed through facial expressions. Robert Stack hounded the director, William Wellman, for the part of John Sullivan. After he got an interview and a face-to-face sit-down with the director, he ultimately clinched the deal. But John Wayne had envisioned a real-life flyer named Robert Cummings for the role. The director stood his ground and told him that he wanted Robert Stack to play this part, and more or less overrode Wayne on this decision. In doing so, the director told Robert Stack that if you screw up, John Wayne is going to strangle both of us. Decades after this film was made, Stack would lampoon his own stoic character in the classic disaster spoof Airplane from 1980. As mentioned earlier, Spencer Tracy was originally cast for this lead role of Dan Roman, but he ended up backing out of the film after he had heard several negative comments about how strict a disciplinarian director William Wellman was. The film was unavailable for viewing for several decades due to confusion in royalty and rights that had arisen around the movie. It was finally made available in 2005 through the estate of John Wayne. Extensive restoration, including the recovery of a reportedly lost reel, was required before the film was realized in its current pristine condition. Ernest Gann's novel that the movie is based on clearly indicates that the character of Sally McGee has resorted to prostitution in order to survive. But on the big screen, made at the height of Hollywood censorship, they were unable to explicitly state this. However, they slyly managed to insinuate this information during Sally's entrance, wherein two sailors at the Honolulu airport recognize her and remark, "Hey, look, remember?" pointing out her hidden past. Once the movie soared at the box office, director Wellman revealed that Joan Crawford, Barbara Stanwyck, Ginger Rogers, and Dorothy McGuire all had turned down roles in this film. None of them had been willing to be seen in such an unflattering light as the characters were shown that were played by Claire Trevor and Jan Sterling, both of whom, ironically, were Oscar nominated for their efforts. Because John Wayne performed double duty as both the star of the show, because he was pinch hitting for Spencer Tracy, and the producer of the movie, it's generally known that much of his role in the film was trimmed out prior to filming, as the character he plays, Dan Roman, has noticeably little screen time in the final print of the movie. A lot of people have made this assumption because of the fact that Spencer Tracy would not have accepted so small a part had it originally been written this way. Spencer Tracy liked to be front and center, so you know there would be plenty of dialogue that he was involved in. Even though John Wayne's role was trimmed down considerably from the original project, the time he is on screen is remarkable. He's cast in a totally atypical role, which is very subdued. It really gives you a chance to see what kind of an actor the Duke really is. His character here is one touched by deep personal and professional tragedy. He plays this role perfectly. The inspiring conclusion is as dramatic and tense as anything you'll see. The lights of the fast-rising runway, the soaring music, the tension, the emotion, which is all packed in there and creates one of the most memorable scenes in movie history. At last, there is the Duke, still haunted, still tragic, but ultimately redeemed in some measure. Take a look at this groundbreaking John Wayne film. I think you'll enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.